I'm Shannon Ireland, your host of a Healthy Push podcast. I struggled with anxiety, panic disorder, and agoraphobia for 15 years. Everything used to be hard for me. Even just driving 5 minutes from my house used to feel impossible. But now I absolutely live for travel and adventure, and I experience lots of peace and joy. I've not only reclaimed my life, but I've helped hundreds of others to do the same. Here, we stop managing anxiety and instead we create a healthy relationship with it. One where you say goodbye to the anxious thoughts, symptoms, panic attacks, and fears, and you actually live your life. Forget complicated strategies, quick fixes, or the same old hacks you've heard 100 times before. Each week, I'll bring you simple, actionable advice and honest conversations that lead to real, long-term healing. You aren't just an anxious person, my friend. There are reasons why you're struggling with anxiety, and these are things you can fix and heal from. And this is where that journey begins. Welcome. You're right where you're meant to be. Hello, and welcome back to a Healthy Push podcast. Let's talk about driving anxiety, and specifically why being on the highway or going over bridges or being in traffic and left turns feel really hard and maybe impossible. And maybe you're doing a lot of avoidance of these things. If you're like, okay, I don't really struggle specifically with like highways, bridges, this conversation will apply to driving in general and also being on trains and buses and planes. And you'll see why. Spoiler alert, it's mostly because you really don't want to feel stuck and trapped and feel anxious and not be able to handle it. Okay, so these are major things that I struggled with for years. And I want to have this conversation because I know that when you better understand what's actually going on, it really allows you to take the steps that are going to help you to heal. So let's dive in and talk about it. So for you, you can probably drive, you can probably go places, do things, but certain situations feel really hard and really uncomfortable. Things like being on the highway or bridges or left turns at busy intersections or traffic or just being stuck like in similar situations as traffic. Maybe it's long stretches without exits. I know for me this was such a big one. I live in Maine and literally the exits are like 2 minutes apart. There are definitely ones that are further apart, but 2 minutes for me would feel like absolute torture because I'd convince myself, like, I'm not going to make it. I need to get off at the next exit. And then usually I would go past that exit because I'm like, okay, I'm okay. Like, I can keep going. I just want to get home. And then the next 2 miles, it would be the same exact thing in my brain, which was just so torturous. And I know these things can be really hard because you're like, I am just so frustrated. Like, I want to be able to drive freely, right? I want to be able to jump on the highway. I want to be able to go over bridges. And like, you might be spending a lot of time doing things that are just adding more time into your day, right? Like taking longer routes, avoiding certain places, avoiding these certain situations because you're like, I just don't want to feel anxious. I don't want to panic. And this is what it really comes down to, right? There are deeper fears here, and it's really not about the highway or bridges or the busy intersections or even driving. It's really about the fears like being trapped and not being able to escape and panicking in a place or situation where you can't get out of it, right? When you think about these things, it's kind of tricky to get out of situations where there's not really like a easy place to pull over, or there's not a place where you can really even pull over, or there's not a place where you can turn around. Like this being trapped, this stuckness is really at the core of it. So I always say it's not really about the driving, it's not really about these specific things. It's more about the feeling. And I don't want you thinking it's because you're not capable. Like you are so, so capable. There's just a lot of fear here. So it might look for you like avoidance or just having a lot of fear. Like maybe for you, you haven't driven on the highway in months or years, which is super common. Maybe for you, you do it, but like you're white knuckling your way through it. Maybe it's the same, right? For bridges, traffic, left turns, whatever it is. Maybe for you, it looks more like avoiding certain routes, like busier roads or certain roads that you've had anxiety and panic on before. Maybe it's only driving on roads that feel, quote, safer. Maybe they have more points in which you know you could stop and like pull over or get some help if you needed it. Maybe for you, it's needing someone in the car with you. Like, as long as you have somebody with you, you're pretty much okay. And there's like not really anxiety, or it's at like a manageable amount of anxiety. Maybe for you, you're often mapping out exits. You're looking at your map. You're like seeing, is there going to be traffic? What do the roads look like? Maybe you're pulling over frequently. But at the core of all of this is really that fear, right? The fear of the sensations, of the symptoms, the fear of feeling trapped, the fear of losing control, which is such a big one. And I think it really comes down to this fear of what if I can't handle it? Right? What if I feel those feelings and I'm truly stuck, trapped? I'm in one of these situations and I can't get out. And I know this is one of the most uncomfortable and scary things to feel, because when your body is throwing all the things at you, it's very easy to go along with those stories of like, oh no, this is going to be bad. I'm going to totally freak out, lose all control, and I'm not going to be able to handle it, which is just kind of ironic, right? Because you've always handled it, like in all the places and all the situations. And maybe it hasn't looked good, right? It's looked pretty chaotic, and that's why you've been avoiding it, or that's why it feels so hard. But it is really helpful to acknowledge, like, you have always gotten through it. I know it probably hasn't looked great, but you have always gotten through it. So let's really dive in, and I want to talk about what drives these fears. And I didn't, there was no pun intended there. But the first one is this perceived trappedness, right? This stuckness. Like highways, bridges, traffic, they really have that like limited escape. There's like not much you can do, right, to get out if you do feel the feelings. And your brain will say, like, this isn't safe. This is really dangerous. We can't get out quickly. Like, there's no quick escape. And this is really hard because that is the reality, right? There's probably not always that space to pull over. There's not always that space to feel like I can do what I need to do if shit does hit the fan. But I always say so much of the trappedness, the stuckness comes internally, not externally. Like, yes, there might not be places and situations that you can easily get out of, but how much of that stuckness is being created internally, aka mentally. Okay, another driver is the intolerance of uncertainty, right? This, all the what ifs, usually those anxious thoughts. What if I panic and it doesn't stop? What if I do lose control? What if I cause an accident? What if I cause harm, right? What if I have a really bad panic attack and it looks like it did before? Because I think so many of us have that memory, right? Of it looked really, really bad and I can't ever have a panic attack that looks like that again. The intolerance of uncertainty, right? Pushing back, like, I can't, right? I can't feel, things can't be uncertain. I need to make sure that I'm not going to panic. I need to make sure that everything's going to be okay. And this is where we usually go down all those rabbit holes, right? Like, how can I manipulate things? How can I avoid? How can I make this less, scary? And that's when we really find ourselves doing a lot, which just adds even more to the anxiety and panic. Another driver of the anxiety is that you probably are hyper aware of your sensations and symptoms. And it's probably especially when you're driving and in certain situations. So you might be really hyper aware of your heart, like anytime it might race or skip a beat or feel like it's just not doing what it, quote, normally should be doing. Maybe you're hyper aware of feeling dizzy or feeling off or dissociation. Like, these are really big ones that I often hear because these are the ones that can feel like scarier to experience when you're driving because of a lot of those stories that we tell ourselves, right? Like, I cannot feel this way while I'm driving. This adds risks. This makes things more dangerous. This makes things more scary. And I think with these stories, we often tell ourselves, right? Like, you're driving, you have to be present. Like, you can't just check out, like, or your kids are in the car, or other people are in the car. Like, you have to be not anxious. Like you have to be with it. And this creates so much pressure, right? And so much more anxiety because you're really convincing yourself, I can't feel this way. Things can't look this way. Like this is so dangerous. When in reality, it probably feels risky. It probably feels more dangerous, but it's not actually more dangerous to experience these things while you're driving. Okay, another one I'll mention, and I briefly mentioned it already, is this past conditioning, right? You've probably had some really anxious moments while driving. You've probably had some very intense panic attacks while driving, and your brain has registered and sort of banked these. Like our brains remember these moments, and our brains are really good at remembering the hard, uncomfortable, the scary moments, and they're not so good at recognizing, like, oh, yeah, that was hard, scary, uncomfortable, but we got through it. So, because your brain remembers these things and it throws these memories at you to be protective, your brain is just sort of constantly on alert and telling you, like, we have to make sure that we don't feel that way, right? We can't feel that way. And so it sort of anticipates every time you're going to get in the car and go on the highway, or maybe be in that left hand turn lane, like, it anticipates that you're going to feel anxious. And so what happens is you typically do feel anxious because you've sort of gone along with all the stories, right? And really prepared your body, and your body is like, oh, there is something going on, right? There is something dangerous. And so it kind of just immediately puts you on that path. So with all of these drivers of driving anxiety, like the good part is your brain has just learned some things that are not so helpful, and it's just trying to protect you, and it can unlearn these things, and we can respond differently to these things, allow ourselves to change the internal dialogue and to respond differently to our thoughts and feelings, and allow ourselves to face uncertainty in a different, healthy way that actually allows us to experience more of that peace and freedom behind the wheel, and allows us to do these things where we're not restricting and limiting, like, all the places that we go and what things look like. So I want to talk through, like, the cycle that really keeps you stuck with these things, because I think it's so important to understand and to be able to see it, because unless we can really see and know what's happening, we can't really make the healthy shifts, right? So usually this cycle starts with the anticipatory anxiety, the anticipation of this might be hard, there might be panic. And usually you'll have the anxiety increase before you even get in the car, right? Before you even get to the bridge or get on the highway or whatever it is. And then you have this hyper awareness kick in, right? The sensations show up, or maybe you're like, am I feeling anything? How am I feeling? And then you do end up feeling the sensations and symptoms, right? And once these things show up in your body, you have that kind of what feels like an automatic fear response of like, oh no, oh God, here it is, right? And then there goes lots of doing. How can I make these feelings go away? How can I calm myself? How can I make myself not spiral into panic? And maybe for you, this looks like doing some things that you've been taught, like breathing exercises or grounding practices or distraction, just blowing cold air in your face, or like immediately picking up the phone. There are so many things that we do, right, in an effort to make the anxiety go away. Some of these things for you might be some safety behaviors. Like we can definitely do things in the moment where we're like, this is helpful. We think it's helpful because we're like, it's giving us some relief, but it's just reinforcing the anxiety. So maybe for you, it's like calling someone or picking up your water bottle, or maybe you carry some cold stuff with you, like an ice pack. Maybe you have oils, or you have snacks with you that you rely on. There are so many different safety behaviors that can be in the mix, like in the moment. And there can also be those safety behaviors that keep you stuck in this cycle kind of outside the moment, where you're like avoiding highways, right? Where you're doing lots of avoidance of feeling. But I should mention it can also look like you're taking longer routes, right? You're trying to bypass things. You're only driving at certain times, maybe when things are less busy. You're escaping situations, right? When you start to feel the anxiety and it feels like it might be too much. And then it's really hard because all of these things, like the doing and the safety behaviors, really do oftentimes lead to that short term relief in the moment. Like they help you to sort of breathe in the moment and maybe take some of the anxiety away. But they really keep you stuck in this cycle of like, anxiety is big, scary, dangerous. Like we need to do all the things to get rid of it. And so you probably often find yourself in this cycle and it feels very automatic, which is so freaking frustrating. I know for me it did. It was like, I'm not really doing anything. Like I don't understand why this keeps happening. But I was so stuck and caught in certain patterns and behaviors that really kept this cycle going and I didn't realize it. So understanding and acknowledging is so incredibly helpful. So, with these things, there's really a shift that has to happen in order for you to get out of this cycle. And it really is this shift from trying to control anxiety, like trying to make yourself not feel it, not experience it, not have the panic attack, like trying to make yourself feel calm and safe before driving and shifting that to really allowing anxiety to just come along, like allowing anxiety to get in the car, allowing yourself to say, I don't want you to be here, right? This sucks. I like don't want to feel you, but you're going to come and you can sit in the passenger seat or you can sit in the back seat, but you don't get to make the decisions. And by doing this, you really let your brain see, like, okay, we don't need to keep fighting and pushing up against anxiety. We can let it come along and we can handle it even while we're driving, like, even while we're going over the bridge or on the highway. Like, it's your chance, your opportunity to show your brain it's not dangerous, right? It might feel that way, but it's not actually dangerous. And this was one of the things that was most helpful for me was like, just allowing myself, giving myself that permission to feel anxious, to have the anxiety in the car, because I was always telling myself, you can't, you shouldn't, like, we absolutely cannot feel this way. And all of that resistance and trying to make myself not feel just brought in so much freaking feeling. Like, I had so many panic attacks, especially in the car. And it makes sense because I was always trying to fight it so much in the car. So really the goal isn't to feel like calm and cool and collected while you're driving. The goal is really to start to allow yourself to feel more anxious while driving and while doing these things and showing your brain like, yeah, this sucks, but we're still safe. This is not dangerous. The confidence, the trust, the safety that you want while you're driving and doing these things comes from experience, right? Not avoidance of feeling, and especially not avoidance of doing the actual things. So, relating to driving anxiety in general, and especially being in these certain situations in which you can feel stuck and trapped, some things that actually help. One big thing is practicing allowing yourself to feel outside of the car. And I know this might sound silly, but I think oftentimes what we do when you're struggling with driving anxiety is you're only focused on how can I get through this while I'm driving? How can I get through this while I'm in this situation? How can I respond to it in the moment? But so much of the shifting and the rewiring happens outside of the car, like actually letting yourself feel anxiety in your day to day, actually supporting yourself through it, and supporting your nervous system outside of the car. Like so much of the work happens outside of the car. I think what happens for a lot of people is that they're only sort of trying to shift things while they're in the car, while they're in certain situations, in certain places. But your brain really needs more practice with how to respond to anxiety outside of those really anxious moments so that it can start to learn, like, oh, this is how we respond to anxiety, which can actually help it to not show up in certain places and situations. It can give you more of that capacity, like that tolerance to feel anxiety. Another big thing that really helps is responding to your thoughts and feelings in a healthy way, like not resisting so much, right? Not pushing up against the thoughts and feelings so much and going along with them and giving them so much attention. Another thing that really helps is doing more looking inward. rather than looking outward, right, to all the safety objects, the behaviors, the looking for quote saving, and doing more looking inward helps so freaking much. Because I always tell people, like, you have what you need inside you to get through it. You're just not letting yourself actually see it. And you're not looking to yourself because you don't trust yourself. And that makes sense. But we can't build trust if you're not looking inward. Okay, another thing that's really helpful is doing quote exposure work, which I really don't love. Like, I don't know, I often don't use the term because I really see this as just you taking healthy steps, going toward living, like going toward goals, doing things that are important to you. But this is a big part of how you heal, right? Is allowing yourself to do things differently. And exposures are not just about like doing the thing. You can't just say, okay, today I drove over the highway, check the box. It's really about focusing on how are you responding to anxiety while you're doing it? What does your relationship with anxiety look like while you're doing it? That's the whole intention of exposure work. So it's not just I'm forcing myself, right? I'm doing the thing, because that often just looks like white knuckling, which does not help and leads to lots of anxiety. It's what does it actually look like while I'm doing the thing? So it can look like getting on the highway, right? Well, letting yourself feel really scared, really uncomfortable. It can look like not immediately rushing to get out or to find a place to pull over when that anxiety starts to rise. It can look like letting yourself actually feel some of the sensations and symptoms without immediately trying to jump into that fix it mode. This is all stuff that I teach in my Overcoming Driving Anxiety mini course. This course really focuses on all the things, like all the driving anxiety stuff. I teach you how to tackle anticipatory anxiety, how to respond to the symptoms and panic when it shows up so that you don't spiral, like how to choose small steps that actually feel doable and manageable for you. So I will link to that in the show notes, but that is just such a helpful course because I literally walk you through what helped me to get to where I am today and what's helped hundreds of my students to experience that peace and freedom in the car and not avoid the highway and the bridges and the lights and all the things. So that's a really good option if you're wanting to dig in and do that work. Okay, I just want to normalize like the avoidance and the fear surrounding highways, bridges, traffic, left turns, all of it is so, so common and makes so much sense when you're struggling with panic disorder and agoraphobia. It really is about that fear of feeling and that fear of not being able to handle it. And you are not alone in this at all. Like so many people struggle with these things and it's not silly. I always tell people it makes perfect sense. There are probably times where you experience a lot of anxiety and panic in places and situations you felt really stuck and trapped. And so it makes sense that these things are hard for you. Even if you haven't had a panic attack while on the highway or going over a bridge or whatever, if you've experienced anxiety and you felt that stuckness and that trappedness in it, it makes sense why some of these things can pop up and why some of these things can be really hard for you. So I really want you to hear me like, you are not broken. This is absolutely fixable. Like, this is stuff that you can work on, and your life can look completely differently. Like, I know I never would have believed this back when I was struggling if somebody had told me this, but just the amount of freedom I have now, like, I get in the car, I don't even think about anxiety. Like, I don't manipulate anything. I just go and I do, and I go on long road trips and I go on adventures and I go on planes and buses and train, like all the things. And I don't have any of those thoughts that I used to have. So I know it might not feel like it's possible because you're so in it, but it absolutely is. Like your brain just learned that some of these things are unsafe and dangerous, and you can teach it a totally different way. So I just want to encourage you, what's a small step that you could take to really allow yourself to lean in and not push back so much against the anxiety? Or maybe for you, just recognizing like, where are you still trying to feel safe before you go? Like, how are you trying to have that control? Because a lot of times, recovery is about looking at all the ways in which you're trying to control things and loosening that grip on control and doing things a little bit differently. Okay, until next time, my friend. keep taking healthy action. I hope you loved this episode of A Healthy Push. If you have, I'd be so grateful if you could leave me a rating and review wherever you're listening to this podcast. This helps people to find the show and get the support they need. And if you know someone who could use a little push, be sure to share this episode with them. And for even more support, head over to ahealthypush.com for show notes and loads of tips, tools, and inspiration to help you on your recovery journey. I'll see you next week.